And good morning, everybody. Sorry I'm a few minutes late here, getting logged on, but we are on the air. And this is Sunday School, pastor's class. I am Mike Carey. I'm the pastor of the First United Methodist Church of Nevada, Iowa, and we are walking our way through the walk. It's a study on 5 essentials for Christian growth, things that you need to be doing as far as being able to grow and to mature as a Christian. And so we are up to the whole idea now of, we've been through, now I'm getting a brain freeze here, of the 5 essentials. Just take a look here real quick at them. They are study and worship, prayer and service and giving. And now we are up to the whole idea of giving. And we talked last time about how a lot of times our level of giving is a reflection of our level of spirituality, because we are told, Jesus says, where your treasure is, there's what your heart is. And so that's a good point. So we need to understand that one. And the whole idea of Jesus with the Sermon on the Mount is also where he talks about money being a condition of the heart and the way you deal with money, and dealing with possessions. It's not a question of having possessions, but your possessions having you. And that's always a good question to ask yourself. Do I have my possessions, or do my possessions have me? Are there things that I just cannot, absolutely will not give up, part with, in any way, shape, or form? And what is that a reflection of? Now, in The Walk, Adam Hamilton, who is the author of the study, talks about the whole idea of hedonism. And Jesus talks about that in Luke chapter 12, verse 15, where he says, your life does not consist of an abundance of possessions. Now, society tells us the exact opposite. All you got to do is turn on your television, radio, computer, any one of your phone, Facebook even, and you're going to see what? All sorts of advertisements. And what's advertisements? It's people trying to get you to spend your money on their product. Now, it could be anything from the big pharmacy companies talking about various drugs and medical procedures, to cars, to food, to detergent, and the industry, businesses pay big money on commercials, on ads, as they call it, marketing, and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars get spent on marketing, not just on marketing, but on marketing research. That's the big thing, where they tried to figure out what's going to be the best way to get you to part with your money and buy their product. And they talk about targeting various groups, age groups, demographics, aspects of society and culture. You'll see a variety of ads that cater more to the older crowd. You'll see them that cater to children. You'll see them that cater to teens. If you want to know what society, particularly American society, is thinking and where it's going, pay close attention to commercials. And that will tell you, because those people have paid a lot of money to a lot of very sharp, very smart people to figure out exactly how they're going to best reach people. And Jesus says, your life does not consist of an abundance of possessions. Society tells us that bigger, better, newer, nicer, cooler is going to make you happy and fulfilled. Go out and buy the newest smartphone. And it's not just the phone, it's the carrier. So do you want to go with this one or that one? And all of them are saying, we're better, we have the better signal, and we'll even pay off your current phone so that you come over and give us your money so that, our services. And you see it on everything. It's amazing to me how commercials have changed. I am the part of the first generation who has really never been without television. I can't remember a time without television at all. And so I guess I could say I'm an expert in terms of commercials, commercial content, and you see it now in terms of phones, computers, tablets, electronics, virtual reality commercials now, and gaming commercials are totally big. Earbuds, cars, all of this, brother and sister, is going to bring you the good life if you simply spend your money on us, on our brand. Developing, in fact, even athletes now are doing that. Tom Brady, quarterback for Tampa Bay, formerly of New England, talks about developing his brand and in terms of the commercials that he does. The first time I really became aware of that was a number of years ago. There was a professional golfer by the name of Greg Norman. He was an Australian, and he developed a line of clothes called Great White Shark because that was his nickname on the professional golfing tour, was Great White Shark. And actually, to this day, I have a sweater that is out of the Greg Norman collection, and it's one of my favorites, but it's got the white shark there on the shoulder, and I've seen other guys, particularly around town here recently, Great White Shark hats or other things, and but that is Greg Norman's brand, and developing his brand, and so that's very important. And so, if you feel like in terms of commercials, commercialism, marketing, you're getting pressured, you are. You are. They are trying to manipulate you. Remember back in the early days, well, it wasn't that much early, but movies, for example, used to have use what was called subliminal suggestion, where in the course of a movie, there would be just an instantaneous clip of like popcorn or soda or something like that. And the idea was to make you wouldn't actually consciously see it, but your subconscious will. And suddenly you'd have this craving to go out and get popcorn or a soda or candy. Well, and that has since become illegal, but it works, And so all this stuff that even you say, well, I just saw it for a split second. It registers. It registers on your mind, which is the greatest computer that's ever been made. So, yeah, it's out there, and it's some of it you can almost say, well, I can't help it. It's all around me. This whole idea of consumerism, buy, and there was a thing on a Dr. Phil where a woman was basically being scammed. And there's not only legitimate commercials and consumerism, there's also scam artists. It's the old, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, so don't go for it. But a woman who had spent over $500,000 of her family's money and it was being scammed, and the money was going to be gone, and she just couldn't believe it that she was being scammed, and just the bad guys, unfortunately, are smart, and a lot of times they're smarter than us. And they'll come up with all sorts of schemes and ways to separate you from your hard-earned money. So you need to be careful. But getting back to the whole idea of materialism, Adam Hamilton refers to it as hedonism. Tony Bennett, one of my favorite all-time singers, he's retiring now. It's too bad, but the guy's in his 90s now. Any guy in his 90s who can sing duets with Lady Gaga, that's pretty cool. He was actually, I remember as a kid, he was one of my grandmother's favorite singers as well. I could remember listening to his album, and it wasn't just I Left My Heart in San Francisco. One of his big hits was The Good Life. Full of fun seems to be the ideal. Oh, the good life. And but he talks about how it's a facade. the good life in terms of all the things that you can have and do. He says it hides really all the pain that people can feel. Google it; it'll be on YouTube. Tony Bennett, "The Good Life." It's a cool song, but of course Tony Bennett's the epitome of cool too. Frank Sinatra's favorite singer, and if that's the case, then. And if you don't know who Frank Sinatra or Tony Bennett are, I feel bad for you. Go ahead and Google them and enjoy some good music. But for most of us, what's the good life? Well, it's having enough to get by. You want to be able to pay your bills and put food on the table and a roof over your head. But hedonism is more than that. It is having enough money, enough material possessions, enough leisure time. The whole idea of hedonism is actually nothing new. It's an ancient Greek philosophy. Hedonism teaches that pleasure is the highest good. To please yourself is the ultimate. That is what you're supposed to aim for. The chief end of humanity, according to hedonism, is to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. Well, okay, say, well, that makes sense, because who wants to be in pain? Well, I don't, but if that's your aim, then money and pleasure become your God, small g, God. And the real God, if you want to try to be hedonistic and still be a Christian, God becomes a means to an end for you. Literally the genie in the bottle. God is Santa Claus. God, I go to God in prayer and gimme, 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 I want, I want, I want. As one of our relatives' children said at one point in time, I mean, if you can't give or won't give your kids everything they want, why did you have kids in the first place? Wow, that's pretty much out there in your face arrogant, but there are a lot of parents like that. I mean, they want to give their kids a better life than what they had growing up. And that's okay. I understand that. Until it gets to the point where that just totally dominates everything. And what the kid wants becomes crowding out what the kid needs. And, I realize that's a fine line here, but Jesus said, you cannot serve God and wealth. That's Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. And that he's not saying money is bad. He's not saying materialism is bad. He's saying when you cannot serve that, you cannot bow down to the altar of materialism. I mean, you either have to decide you're going to serve God, you're going to serve the world. And the thing is, if you decide to devote yourself to hedonism, to pleasure, if that becomes your chief end, it's short-lived. And there's also this thing that's called hedonistic adaptation, which means you set your heart on something. Let's say a certain high-end kind of car. You want a Mercedes. And you work hard, you save, and finally you obtain it. You get that thing that you desired. But after a while, your pleasure begins to dissipate. And it's like, okay, I got this now. Now what? So what? What's next? What do I do now? And so then you have to set a whole nother goal as you set out for something else, something more. What you get is never enough. You're always needing more. That's that whole idea of hedonistic adaptation. So you have to decide what's enough. And you have to make that decision, and you have to stick with it. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with wealth. There's nothing wrong with money. This is money. It's not the money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. When you begin to love money more than you love people, more than you love God, more than you love serving and seeking out, what's best for your fellow man, then you've fallen into the trap. And you got to step back and say, Okay, where am I? And where do I go from here? What do I do now? And no one expresses that idea better than Solomon, King Solomon. And I want to read just a portion of Ecclesiastes. Solomon wrote some of the Proverbs, but he wrote Ecclesiastes, which is an interesting book. It's a book that a lot of biblical scholars wonder how in the world did this make it into the biblical canon of the sacred writings, because it is an absolute downer of a book. It just totally is. You read it, and if you're not depressed when you start, you will be by the time you get done. Just let me give you an example. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 2, starting at verse 4, the second part of it, part B, and going through to verse 10. This is the New Revised Standard Version. Solomon says, I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I also had great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the treasure of kings and of the providences. I got singers, both men and women, and delights of the flesh, and many concubines. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure. That's hedonism, okay? Pure and simple. Being the king and being extremely wealthy as well as extremely wise. But there's an interesting comparison right there between wisdom and wealth. You would think, actually God's curse on Solomon was to give him everything he wanted. Say, well, may God so curse me? No. You read Ecclesiastes and you see this. I kept myself from my heart from no pleasure. Whatever I wanted, I got it. He had not only 1,000 wives, he had 700 concubines. Huh? Are you kidding me? And wealth beyond imagination. Just Solomon had it all. He says so right there. And yet, as you go over and over again, there's a refrain in the book of Ecclesiastes. And he keeps saying, all is meaningless, pointless, and vanity, a chasing after the wind. Whoa. Chasing after the wind? Wow. I mean, what's he saying there? He's saying, coming to the end of his days, that possessions and wealth will not bring you happiness. It will not bring you ultimate pleasure. It may for a time. But when pleasure and possessions are what you live for, you're going to find out what Solomon is talking about when he refers to chasing the wind. So then, you have to ask yourself, what are the keys to a good life, the good life, as Tony Bennett goes and sings? No, I won't sing that for you. I wouldn't do it justice, and besides, no accompaniment. But just this last week, of course, it's Christmas time, and multiple stations on multiple occasions will air the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And as the angel Clarence will tell George Bailey, George, you've had a wonderful life. Well, George doesn't think so, because George has gotten caught up in the whole money thing. And all of a sudden, when Uncle Billy loses the deposit and somebody's going to go to jail, as George says to Uncle Billy, and it's not going to be me, and he's on the bridge saying, I wish I'd never been born. He's in the throes of despair and depression because he can't see a way out. He finds out that a man who has friends is never a failure, as Clarence writes in the book for him of Tom Sawyer. But we need to understand that there is more to life than possessions your work, the things that you can obtain. There are people, there are relationships, there are family, there is love, there is compassion, there is kindness. Those are the things that bring us fulfillment. Those are the things that, in the end, ultimately, are going to matter. I go back to the, I'm showing my age here, the movie Ghost, Patrick Swayze, and as he's passing eventually on into the great beyond after saving his girlfriend, he says, "It's the love that you take with you." Well, I don't know if that's quite theologically correct or in reality correct. You get down to those types of things, and someday we're going to find out the theology is not worth the paper that it's written on. But in this life, it is the love that matters. It is the love that goes forward. It is the caring. It is the kindness that goes forward. And that really matters and builds a life and makes a life worthwhile. Um, yeah, yeah. The contrast between George Bailey in A Wonderful Life and Mr. Potter, Skinflint Potter. My wife gets upset with the movie It's a Wonderful Life because Mr. Potter is a scumball and he never gets it in the end. What he gets is kind of implied because he's alone and everybody in town is there with George at the end of the movie and he's alone. But she has this sense of justice. She wants Potter to get it in the end, and actually I do too. I kind of go along with her, but so in that sense, the movie leaves you a little dissatisfied. We're getting into the theology of the movie It's a Wonderful Life here, but who doesn't like Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed? But the whole idea then is that it's about people. It's about relationships. It's not about possessions. It's not about hedonism. It's not about pleasure, making pleasure the end. And so our next aspect of this is gratitude. In other words, giving thanks for what you have, having a spirit of gratitude, an attitude of gratitude. You might think, well, that falls more into Thanksgiving. No, actually, that falls into Christmas, very, very much so, because we have the whole giving, the whole gift thing at Christmas, which comes from God giving the first and the best gift in Jesus Christ. And as God gave, so then should we give. Above and beyond the Santa Claus thing. I'm not against Santa Claus. I like Santa Claus and that the whole thing that goes with it. And I revel in that, and I agree that Christmas is for children, but all of us are to be children to receive the gift of God. And I'll talk more about that on Christmas Eve. But developing the attitude of gratitude is key for all of us as Christians as we develop in our faith. So that's as far as I'm going to go today. I'm going to quit a little bit early here today, get a bonus. We will not be on the next 2 weeks because of the holidays. There is no Sunday school, and if there is no Sunday school, well, then I'm not going to be on. So, but I will wish you a Merry Christmas and happy blessed holiday and encourage you to join us for Christmas Eve. Our services will be at 5, 7, and 9 o'clock this year. And masking mandatory for the first two, masking optional for the last one. The reason for mandatory masking at the first two is that we have a lot of people, families coming together, and they're coming from you don't know where and they've been exposed to what. And that's how COVID gets picked up. It seems like a lot of times as people went one place and then came back and they caught it wherever they went. And so we want to try to protect people as best we can while trying to have the best celebration of the Christmas season that we possibly can. And so that's why we're doing it that way. I think it's a fair and a wise way to do it. But in the meantime, if you're watching from afar, have a blessed Christmas season, and I hope the Lord blesses you real good.